Hi, welcome to Sandwich Parenting. Today we're interviewing Linda Meredith from Brisbane, Australia. She's Australia's first certified trauma recovery coach and the founder of the world's first trauma recovery academy. A mother of 3 grown children, about to be a grandmother, she once suffered from a complete breakdown where she lost her cognitive functions. Quite the scary situation. And she had to develop her own healing journey. She's developed a gentle and very powerful way to heal CPtsd, and it is a lifelong journey. And she's making all of this material free to access on her website, through Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. And she is such an advocate for those who suffer from this debilitating state. She's a coach and a counselor, and I think that you're really going to enjoy this interview. Hello, Linda.
Hello, Sherry. It's lovely to meet you.
It is so lovely to see you. And I thought for sure you were going to say something like, "Hi, this is Linda from beautiful Brisbane," because that's how you greet everybody on your videos on YouTube. How is lovely Brisbane?
Oh, it's beautiful because it's the end of spring, but, we're coming into summer and everybody, generally speaking, loves summer. But, yeah, not me.
You don't love summer?
No, we get incredible humidity here. It's the air that you wear.
Yeah. Okay. No.
Yeah, air conditioning all the way for me.
Yeah.
But the other 9 months
is beautiful Brisbane. Well, thank you so much for joining us on Sandwich Parenting. I promised that I wouldn't fangirl, but I can't help it. I just am a huge fan of your community on Facebook. I love your videos. I'm so thrilled with the work that you're doing because I think it's so important in the world today. And I wanted to ask you, can you tell us more about what CPtsd is?
Okay, so most people, generally speaking, are familiar with PTSD, and a lot of people are familiar with PTSD from the veteran's perspective.
Yes.
PTSD can also happen in our day-to-day life as well. So it's one trauma. It may just be one trauma that happens once, or one type of trauma that happens a few times, and the stress overload impacts us in a variety of ways. But with complex PTSD, it brings into a number of factors. So it's not just multiple types of trauma that happen repeatedly over a period of time. It also comes into our adverse childhood experiences.
Right.
But
there's a measurement that
all our ACEs.
Yes.
Yeah, so you can actually look up online and do a quick survey of your ACEs out of 10, but there are much more extensive surveys for your ACEs as well. But also with complex PTSD, there's also epigenetics. So what we're getting handed down at a genetic level. There's also the intergenerational trauma, so especially with the abandonment wound, how that's getting handed down in our families, and
the child
in the world is emotional neglect.
Yes, okay,
is playing a very big role and a very big understanding. People are starting to understand how much that impacts us on a variety of levels, and how we need to be the generation that changes from that.
That is so incredibly beautiful. And you're called a trauma recovery coach. What does that mean?
I'm a certified trauma recovery coach, which means that I went and studied how to be a certified trauma recovery coach through the only place that actually does it properly in America. So I became Australia's first certified trauma recovery coach because I started back in the beginning with them, and I'd already done counselling before that. And so you'll find a lot of people who are life coaches or alternative therapies and say they manage trauma, help with trauma, but I would suggest that you really look into it further. Plus psychologists, if you're going to go to see one of them, also looking to see if they've been educated in trauma and specifically complex trauma.
Yes, because it just seems like it's not, what's the book, that big book where they list out all of the diagnosis?
Oh, the DSM-5.
Yes. Yeah. And so complex PTSD isn't actually written in that book.
It's not recognised or acknowledged. It's a separate classification under the PTSD.
Got it. Yep.
So it doesn't have a classification of its own. Plus, it's not really well known or taught about. Okay, so a psychologist, and even now to this day, so I have psychologists that see me, and they have all said the same thing, that when they do their psychology degree, they may get, an hour or two briefly mention about trauma, which equates to nothing.
No.
So not only does the DSM-5 hardly recognise it, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk and a number of others have been advocating for us for years to have the DSM-5 change.
Yeah.
But that's had no impact because it's all political and, the background of the DSM-5. So that's been hard. And it just seems to be this ongoing snowball effect where complex trauma isn't being recognised for what it is. And it's not even in the medical books where the doctors get taught.
Right, exactly. And it's so interesting too, because you can have more than one child raised in a family, but one person have it and others not, which almost counterintuitively seems to say, well, the others didn't have this problem, so you must not either,
absolutely.
Right? And that's really kind of part of the problem as well. So I'm curious because what you're doing is very specific, and from a personal perspective, I feel like this is so important for us in this world now, especially with all the shutdowns globally, and lots of different people suffering even more in different ways. I want to know how you got here. How were you raised? How were you parented? What? Tell us your story.
How was I grown up, thrown up, or just,
that too.
Well, I'll keep it as brief as possible. But basically, I was an unexpected child by two people in the 60s who had intimate relations outside of marriage. Both my grandparents actually were ahead of their time and said to my parents, you don't have to get married, but they did. Quickly had another brother, and I think I was around 4 or 5, they headed for their first separation, ended up, a long story short, they ended up divorced. But now, in hindsight, handed down for multiple generations in both sides of the women in my family is an abandonment wound. So my great-grandmother on my mother's side, going back up through that branch, she actually abandoned 4 girls in the middle of nowhere. And so my grandmother, she's still alive, but she's the most bitter woman, and even in her dementia, I saw her last year and she said, and my mum's deceased, she ended up with breast cancer, secondary level, and died, and said to us just before she died that her mother hated her. And we were like, where did all this come from?
Right.
And then my grandmother in her dementia said to me last year, so what do you think of Jem? And I'm like, what? Where did this come from? And I said, well, she was my mum, I loved her. And she said, oh, I hated her. And I'm like, wow. My mind trying to wrap around the concept of, one, how do you hate your own child?
Yeah.
It was just mind-blowing. But then my other grandmother, she ended up in a paid position in an orphanage. So,
oh my goodness.
she had no one and nothing and was stuck in a home where she was different to all the other orphans, obviously, who didn't have parents. She had a mum. So all these female abandonment wounds were handed down.
Absolutely.
And I had no idea.
Right.
Zero idea. And all the men on both sides of my family were alcoholics. And so my brother ended up being alcohol and other drugs addicted, and I got all the abandonment wound. And basically I set out to raise my kids differently, to never be divorced, because both sides of my family are multi-generational divorced, in times when divorce was not even looked upon in society very good at all.
Right.
And
you would parent your children differently than how you were parented. And so what did that look like? What did you do differently? Because, you've now inherited, without you knowing, a lot of, not just through your DNA, but even just in the way everybody was treated, right? Like, it's like both.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The unspoken rules are often the cruelest rules, and the rules we don't know.
Yes.
And the unspoken rule in our family is when anything bad happens, we don't talk about it. So if we have a falling out, we don't talk about it. And if you want to talk about how you're feeling, then you're the one with the problem.
I was going to say, then you're the problem. That's right. That's right. So the squeaky wheel is the one who's actually the problem.
Yeah.
And so you're not allowed to feel anything. And so
that's right.
So if you feel something, you feel bad. But if you say something about it, you feel bad. And then if you don't say something about it, you feel bad too. It's like a triple whammy.
Oh, all the way. And the irony of it all was when I was a teenager, I wanted that connection. I wanted the emotional connection with my mum. I was desperate for it, and and my stepfather was there, and I'm a really inclusive person from way back. And I was like, I don't care if the world calls you my stepdad and my dad. I want this connection. I want to have these conversations. So I used to even leave notes under their pillows trying to express how I was feeling and come and talk to me, And so in the end, they called me Elizabeth Taylor. That was their way of saying, you're a drama queen, get over it.
No. I thought they meant that as a beautiful compliment because of how beautiful she was.
No, not at all.
It was the drama.
You dare to talk about how you feel. You're just an emotional drama queen.
Oh, my goodness. So you had an unconscious parenting book, in your head. And so how did you parent differently? What did you do with your kids? Because you very consciously decided that you're going to parent differently.
Definitely. So from birth, I wanted to know who they were as individuals.
Wow. Yeah.
So I wanted to get to know their differences. It was important that those differences weren't just about personality or character or anything. This was, what do you like to eat? What do you prefer? I believe in having a schedule with babies, and it was fortunate that I did because all of us are on the spectrum and didn't know it at the time.
Oh, my goodness.
But we also, so my eldest son, he ate food, like slush food, from about 9 weeks old. He was 4 weeks pregnant and he was just starving. So I breastfed him for 5 months, but he also wanted the food. So I went, okay, and he's still well to this day and still eats an enormous amount of food. But then came my daughter, and she was like 2 mouthfuls. And I'm full. And it takes a lot of courage as a parent to say, okay, they're different.
This is different. Yeah.
They don't want this. They don't want all this food. There's something they don't like. Let's try different things.
Right. That's not how the previous generation would have raised kids.
No, this is how the previous generation is very much, this is how we do things. Yeah. This is how it is. If you don't do them and you don't comply, then you're the one with the problem and you need to get on board with us.
Right. So one of the most major things, that's amazing, because one of the most major things that you changed as a parent was to essentially say to your child, when you're different from any expectation, it's not that you're a problem, it's that you're actually a different person with different needs and a different style. And that probably gave them permission to feel okay about themselves and their own opinions.
Definitely. Yeah. Definitely. One of my children came to me as a teenager and said, oh, Mum, I don't think I'll ever have children, or maybe I'll adopt, or, going through that whole teenage stage of wanting to understand their sexuality and so much more. And every time they came to me, I said, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
You mean you didn't say like, what? What do you mean I'm not going to have grandchildren? Like, you didn't actually kind of react.
No.
You just said, okay. No. That if that's what you want, then that's fine. That's amazing.
They even said to me, but if I had foster children, would you love them? I said, if they're part of our family, it doesn't matter how they get here, we love them.
That's
no matter what, we love them because they're part of our family. That's how it goes.
That's so beautiful.
And loving our children, for me, doesn't come along with optional extras of I'm only going to love you if. It can't come with optional extras because then you impede their ability to keep being curious and keep growing and keep learning. And now that child is married and about to have my first grandchild.
Oh my God, congratulations.
So it's goodness. Like if I had stuck my nose in back then, and they're even a different religion to me, and I have zero issue with that at all, and people can't believe it. I'm like, how can you not love your child?
Yeah.
I simply do not understand how you cannot love your child, let alone how can you not love any child.
Yeah. No, and so I think this part of you drives a lot of the work that you do, because you don't just take on your own clients. You've given away so much material. You have a whole library out there of complex PTSD. You are putting on free videos on YouTube. You are building this incredible safe community in Facebook for those who are suffering from CPTSD, with wonderful administrators, by the way.
They're really good.
They're really good. They're really good. And so you are doing all this for free. Something is driving you to give this to the world. Why?
That's a really good question. When you put that question to me, I really wanted to sit with it and have, this nice compact answer for you. But it doesn't come in a compact answer. So I don't have an ulterior motive.
No, clearly.
I don't. No,
clearly.
If you did, you wouldn't keep doing it.
Yeah. It's with love, clearly. Yes.
Yeah, I know what it's like to be a mum who struggles for answers.
Yes.
I know what it's like to be a mum who struggles with somebody who's got their hand on the purse strings and, barely doesn't even let you know where the money's going, even though you're earning it as well. I know what it's like to want better for your children.
Wow. Yeah.
And to have the whole professional scene like, well, no, you've got to pay for it. And the thing is, there's plenty of room to give the information, and I still have clients, and the people that see me are ready to pay and ready to do the work. So I would rather you had the information until you're ready and at the stage where you want to work with me and can afford to work with me. But until then, I want to give you a gift of hope. I want to give you a gift that there are ways that you can work and function and heal and recover along the way until you're at the stage of being able to go back to work or whatever that means for your financial situation. So for me back then, before I even knew what complex PTSD was, it would have been a case of I couldn't access my own finances. They were kept from me. Wow. So, it was a challenging time, and my heart goes out to mums all over the world who are struggling. I know what it's like to struggle, and I also know what it's like to be a single mum. And I also know that I'm not the person that everybody needs to see. I'm not everybody's preferred type of person, irrespective of my big heart. I am not everybody's preferred type of person. So if you can take the information and take it to your trauma therapist, trauma coach, whoever, and say, I have this information. Now, how do I apply it to my individual life?
Yes.
Then you're able to be set up to set yourself free and go on and help others as well.
Well, I love this model because in a weird kind of way, it's this freemium model, right? As in, like, you are giving people free content first, right? And then they can play with it. They can figure it out. They can, decide that, oh, now I know what I really need. So each hour that they spend with their therapist, it's almost 100-fold more impactful.
That's right. That's right. And see, one of the things that I'm really, really passionate about is it has to be effective.
It is.
Like, I have clients that are like, I literally have clients that have spent 30 years plus in therapy, and they do 10 weeks with me, and it's like their whole world is just like, let's go.
Because now they know, but now they sort of know where it came from, right? And now they kind of know, like, oh, aha, and then your brain starts, coming together, as opposed to walking in there and saying, okay, so I'm going to tell you about my week, and that didn't really work well, and then an hour goes by, and they didn't actually work on the core of what was the actual issue. Right. That often happens.
That's right.
Not I'm not going to say it's anybody's fault, but I found that reading your work, watching your work, I got more out of 2 minutes than I would have, in another situation. So I'm just so excited. I'm trying not to fangirl. Can you tell? I'm just so excited that I discovered you. And, I have one last question. If you could give one piece of advice to parents who have realized that they need to change the way they parent, what would that advice be?
Believe in yourself. And here's why. Because of the intergenerational nature of complex PTSD, plus if we only take it from the emotional neglect perspective, you have to be willing to believe in yourself to make decisions that no one in your family has ever made.
Yes.
You have to be willing to believe in yourself that you're going to find resources that will help back up those decisions you want to make.
Yes.
And you have to be willing to take steps that your whole family system will go, what's the problem? Everything's worked until now.
Yes.
And you've got to be willing to have courage that as you take these steps, you are making a change, but it's a change that you won't see results for until your children become adults. So you have to be willing to have this deep abiding faith that even though it feels like a shot in the dark,
and boy, does it ever.
and it does. And the last thing we want for our children is to grow up, coming back to us and saying, listen, you're a really crappy parent.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's face it, scares the living daylights out of those of us who have good intentions. And, I had to pick my children up and leave their father because his anger, I could handle the anger at me because I grew up with it, but the anger at our youngest especially, I said, no way. Now, you've got to remember, this is back in a time when we had no scientific information about the impact on the brain.
Right.
Okay. No information about emotional neglect. And we had things like information from Pia Mellody and John Bradshaw on inner child codependence, but we had no significant information like we do today.
Yeah, there's a lot more now. Yeah.
That's right. And with all three of my children, I had to make a decision to do something I never wanted to do, which was divorce and leave their dad. But I did it in a way that I knew that I gave him plenty of opportunities to seek help for himself, because I continued to seek help for myself as well.
Yes.
Okay? It wasn't as though I was saying, you need help and I don't.
No,
I was getting help and I'm saying, well, you need help too.
Yes.
But now, as adults, my children look back on what I did, having the courage to go against both sides of the family who thought he was this wonderful guy. They didn't know him behind closed doors.
Yeah.
And my children look back now and they're very deep thinkers, so they think things through. I think they're more intelligent than me because they have the internet age as well. But they all say to me, Mum, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry. It gets pretty emotional. Thank you for what you did.
Yes.
At a time when nobody else believed but you that we needed the difference for our children. So your actual vision as a parent has to be not just your children, but you want to make sure that their children and their children's children have the impact of the change of the decisions that you're willing to make.
So, wow. So that is so powerful, Linda. And I think that anybody who is a parent who has dealt with unrealized trauma often come to a head where they have to make a choice between something they believe in and something that they believe in. And,
That's right.
And making some difficult choices. So I hope that you're incredibly proud of yourself and know that we're so grateful for the decision that you've made. And now sharing your story and just everything you've learned, and giving so much. I know that you have 3 fans, within your children, and then their kids too, or their kids coming, or your one grandkid who's coming. But Linda, I am so in awe of your work, and really, wanted to thank you so much for the time.
You're more than welcome. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to sit with me. It's just amazing. It's a privilege, to be honest, to share with people, and I never take it lightly how much of a privilege it is to share with people and put hope back in their heart that we can be the change that our children and our children's children need.
I love that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to Sandwich Parenting. Visit us at www.sandwichparenting.com for more stories, and drop me a line at sherry@sandwichparenting.com.